Today I am so excited because I get to take you back and take you forward in regards to where we're at as a church and where we're going. And whenever I talk about where we are as a church, I need you to get this really quick first. When I say the church, I mean us, okay? And that's one of the things that's distinctly different about Christianity, is that the church is specifically a plural version of Christian. That's what church is. When you put a bunch of Christians together, they become a church. It's the plurality of Christians. So when I say our church throughout this service, I need you to get the fact that what I'm not saying is like our organization. Like our church is actually technically like a business, right? Where it's like we have to like file paperwork and do all that, and because we own stuff and like that idea. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about when I say church is I mean us. Literally us. Us who call Acts Church our home. We as a community are the church. So when I say church, if this is your home, I'm talking about you as well. The interesting part about a church, of course, is that we all come in at different times. Some of you guys have been here for years and years and years. Some of you guys are like, this is week 2 for me, but I think this is my church. And when I say church, I mean you as well, because there isn't some sort of barrier to entry in regards to like, must be this tall to be part. So over the last few years, our church has been on a really, really interesting journey. Back in the beginning of 2020, God spoke to us these words, move forward by faith. And that terminology is kind of interesting. Get this, because the idea of faith is specifically something we cannot see. It's like devoid of like physical representation of being able to clearly understand and see. Faith is kind of like the hope for what we cannot see, is what the Bible says. But then he told us to move, which move means take action. So think about this. Take action on something you cannot see. You're like, wait, what? Right? Take action on something that you cannot see. But God pointed our eyes to this story in Genesis 12. Some of you guys have been here, so this is old hat, so I'll bring you back. But a lot of you guys, this is kind of new to understand the journey we've been on. In Genesis 12, 1 through 3, it says this, the Lord said to Abram, leave your native country, your relatives, and your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. This is cool. Get this. He goes, go to the land. And he doesn't give him a land. He says, go to the land that I will show you. And I'll show you sooner or later. He says, I'll make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt, and all the families on earth will be blessed through you. God tells Abram, I have an amazing blessing that I want to give you. And in fact, my blessing is so good, it's not only just going to bless your life. After it blesses your life, it's actually going to bless the lives of your family, and then it's actually going to bless the entire world around you. This blessing is going to keep kind of spiraling out from you. But what was so fascinating about this is he says, I have a blessing for you, and he says, I just need you to go and get it. And he's like, where do I go? And he's like, not telling you yet. He says, I need you to go to the place that I will show you. He says, leave this land. And what's amazing is Abram literally picks up everything and he just starts marching forward. He starts heading in the direction he felt God was calling him. And every day he'd break down the camp and he'd pack up all the stuff and he'd walk again along this path. And every day he'd break down the camp and he'd walk again. And then what's so amazing is after months of traveling like this, all of a sudden one day God shows up and says, here. Today, you've arrived. I'll read that to you in just a minute. The call of Abram was to move forward by faith, right? To put action to something he couldn't yet see. And when we thought about that as a church, about what's our next like big thing that we can't see but we believe God has for us, a blessing that would bless us and then bless the community. When we prayed back at the beginning of 2020, we're like, for us as a church, it's a building. It's a next spot. It's a next location. We've now had a multitude of different locations. 2 different locations we've done services in like this in the weekend. This is not our building. We rent it. And then we've also had different places where we rented for storage, just rented for alpha, rented for office space, all these different things. And we said, what would be great is if we had this next space that we could really, really be able to leverage to be able to not only just bless our church, but bless the community as well. So when we thought about that, how do we move forward by faith? What we did is we decided we're going to start walking as if this building exists. Because at the time, listen to me, I looked all around, I identified 3 buildings that would be great, and none of them were for sale, and no one wanted to sell them to us. So we're like, great, well now what do we do? And what I said was, what we're gonna do is start moving forward by faith. In the next 2 years, what we're gonna do, 2020 and 2021, we're going to lock our budget, and any increased generosity that comes, any growth that happens in our church is going to go all towards the idea that we are going to build up a nest egg so that I believe God is someday going to point out a building to us. We will not be empty-pocketed at that moment. We will say yes, and we can buy it and we can start renovating it so that we can start doing this. So we said that in January of 2020, and some of you guys might know some crazy stuff went down in 2020, right? Literally like 2 months later, right, like the world shut down. And it's wild because even in the midst of that, even in the midst of COVID, I need you to get this, as the church went online and all these different things and strategies changed, as we started meeting back in the summer outdoors and then transitioning back into it, and even though our weekend attendance was much smaller, the generosity in our church kept increasing and increasing and increasing even through all of that. In fact, we came out of 2020, and in 2020, we were able to still excel past our budget. And then in 2021, as we started moving even more into this of kind of getting back to normal, I said, God has this call for us to be able to take and really, really push into this generosity. In fact, the goal for us was, at the time, our budget for the year was $250,000 for the entire year of ministry. And I said, in this 2 years, what we really need to do is we need God to move in a mighty way so that we could collect an additional $250,000 so that when God says here, we can actually put a down payment on a building, actually start renovating it, and have that finance. And even through COVID, and even through all of that on the back of it, after those 2 years, we didn't raise $250,000. We raised $315,000 in 2 years' time towards this. The idea of that happening during COVID, through all of that time, I've talked to other people and they're like, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard. Like, that's miraculous. That's impossible. And I was like, it is impossible unless God's doing it, right? But what also was amazing is that beginning of 2020, we're like, hey, we're going to believe that God is going to give us this opportunity, and we just need to start living like it's real. December 15th, 2021, right? 16 days before the end of that 2-year journey, we signed papers on a building and we purchased our first building. A building that was not for sale, never went on the market, was no. All of a sudden, the owner came back to us and said, yes, we'll sell that building to you. I have no interest in selling it to anyone else. It's not on the market. But if you want to buy it for this price, you can buy it. And we were able to purchase this building right in downtown LaSalle. It's this awesome 20,000 square foot building. We have plenty of room to be able to build out. And again, something that was impossible became a reality. I told you, I need you to get this though. As awesome as this blessing is, the blessing is not the purpose. We are not building a building, we are building a legacy. For us as a church, our focus isn't the idea of building buildings. That's not that exciting to me. A building is a tool so that we can do more in our community. The idea for us is we want to build a legacy, and a legacy is something that outlasts our lifetime. A legacy is something that continues to bless even when we're gone. That's our goal as a church. So I said, we're not going to just build a building. We're going to focus on the idea that as we do this, we're interested in building a legacy. And that was our focus for 2022, and then it's the beginning of this year. Again, sorry, recap. As I was looking at that phrasing, building a building, building a legacy, I realized we spent so much time talking about legacy. This year is important for us to focus on building. Not the building. What I mean is building the verb. Legacy is the destination. Building is the verb, right? Canaan, where Abram went, was the destination. But moving forward by faith and breaking down the camp and continuing to work and struggle, that was the verb. And I need you to get this. Very often, we talk about our faith as though it's a noun. Like, I'm a Christian, I have faith, like something you just possess. But I need you to get, faith is a verb. It's something that inspires you to move. Faith is something that you do. In fact, when we were planning our church, we fell in love with this verse out of James 2:17, that says this. Check it out. He says, so you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it's dead and useless. He says faith without deeds, that's dead. He says, but that doesn't even make sense. Faith always produces action. If you love something, you act on it. If you have faith, you act on it. And he's like, if you have faith, your life is not just going to be this noun kind of faith. He says, your life is going to show it by how you live. And I tell you this because I believe that God is calling us in this year to focus on the verb of build. Every single one of you is going to build something. In this year, you're going to order something together with your life. In fact, the definition of build is to form pieces into a whole or to develop according to a plan. And all of you are going to form something with your time this year. Form something with your energy this year. Form something with your finances this year. But the real question is, are you going to form something together that's actually going to last? We can build a lot of things, but are they going to really have substantial impact in this world? And even more so, for us as a church, you as people of faith, are you going to build something that's going to have eternal impact? There's this amazing story in 1 Corinthians 3 story. It's just a teaching that Paul gives to the church in Corinth. But he's talking about how we live and then what comes after what we do in this life. And he says this, talking about himself, him and another partner. He says, we are both God's workers. You are God's field. You are God's building. Because of God's grace to me, I've laid a foundation like an expert builder. And now others are building on it. But whoever is building on this foundation must be very careful. He says, Jesus is the foundation. That's clear. I laid that for you. He says this in verse 11. For no one can lay any other foundation than one we have, Jesus Christ. Anyone who builds on that foundation may use a variety of materials, gold, silver, jewels, wood, hay, or straw. But on the judgment day, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder's done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. If the work survives, that builder will receive a great reward. But if the work is burned up, the builder will suffer great loss. The builder will be saved, but like someone barely escaping through a wall of flames. He says, Jesus is the foundation, and now each of us get to build our life on top of that. Each of us get to build our lives on that. I love, we sung that song, right? The idea that we'll build our life on Him. And he says, but I need you to get this. You're saved by grace. So he says, someday when you get to judgment day, just real quick, we just talked all about heaven. When we get to heaven, there is not some sort of test or performance. It is simply a guest list, right? There's no like, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? It's literally a guest list at the door, and everybody who Jesus wrote down their name because we took his hand and put our trust in him, he put our name down on the list. And God lets everyone who Jesus put on that list into heaven. But he says there still is a judgment for all of us who are Jesus followers, who have been forgiven. He said your life is kind of put into this Holy Spirit fire. And what it does is it tests the quality of it. And he says as it burns things away, anything that wasn't of eternal value just kind of burns off. Let me be real for you, okay? Like when you get to heaven and then like you get up there and God's looking, like he's not like, wow, nice car. Awesome. Sweet ride, bro. Yeah. Right? Like a whole bunch of things, right? Like a whole bunch of things that we focus our attention on, right? Like, oh, like, wow, did you get your master's degree? I am so impressed, right? Like there's a lot of things, I'm saying that could lead to something, but just in and of itself, there's a lot of things that we spend a lot of time on that God's just going to be like, yeah. But there are things that actually had eternal impact that as that fire rages through, he's going to say, wow, this made a difference. This actually lasted beyond your life on earth. In fact, there are people here because of that, because of how you served, because of how you gave, because of what you did. There are people on earth right now who love Jesus and are growing. There are children that you left behind who are faithfully still serving and growing the church because of your investment. You see, there will be things that actually will be of supreme value where God will be like, man, look at this. And he says, and then we're going to celebrate. But he said, the danger is you might be saved, and then some of us might get to heaven, and when that goes through that fire, he's going to be like, nothing. You're saved. I mean, you're welcome. But you never did anything with your life that actually impacted heaven. Like you never leaned into generosity with your time and with your attention and with your money. You never looked for ways that you could sacrifice yourself so that you could bless others. You never shared your faith. You never led anyone to Jesus. And he's going to say, like, I mean, you're welcome. But he said the interesting part is before you kind of go in, there's going to be this really sad moment where you're like, why did I spend so much time working so hard on earth to have nothing to show for it? He says, instead, I would encourage you to invest in something that has eternal rewards, legacy rewards. You're going to build something this year, and my call to you is, would you consider how you could build something that will truly last? And I have the secret for you, okay? I have the secret for you. You don't have to search and search and search. It is really, I have the shortcut. I have the hack to knowing that you're actually going to build something that lasts. Do you want to hear it? It's really awesome. Do you want to hear it? You don't seem sold yet. Okay, here's the secret, okay? Here's the secret to knowing you're investing in something that's going to last, that when you get to heaven and that fire rages, there's going to be something left. It's really easy. Find something God is doing and join it. What your job to do is find somewhere you know God is moving and then join it, because God is always in the legacy business. God is always in the eternal business. When you see him moving, it's always that he's doing something that has eternal reward. So when you see God moving, you can jump in with it and say, I want to be a part of that because I know that that investment is going to last forever. In fact, let me just show you this, a call of what Jesus said he is doing. Now that he has left this earth, what is he going to do? Matthew 16, 13 through 18, it says, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked the disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? That's Jesus' nickname for himself. Well, they replied, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And then he asked them, but who do you say I am? Simon Peter answered, you're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus replied, you're blessed, Simon, son of John, because my Father in heaven has revealed this to you. You did not learn this from any human being, and now I say that you are Peter, which means rock, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the powers of hell will not conquer it. Jesus says, I'm getting ready to die and leave, and really quick, at the end of that, he tells us what he will do for the rest of his life. I will build my church. He says, that's what you're going to see. On this earth, what you're going to see is, I am going to build my church. And he says, hell literally can't overcome it. It will last forever. It will stretch on into eternity. The church and what it is will continue on into eternity. So I'm telling you, friends, we know that Jesus is building his church. Specifically, we have seen Jesus do miracles inside of our little community here. We have seen miraculous things where we recognize it is the hand of God. Again, over $300,000 in the middle of a pandemic. A building that was not for sale, yet miraculously sold to us. Literally, one of the people who are pastors connected to our church had a prophetic dream 2 or 3 days before we signed papers to tell us he saw our building, and he said it was strange because it was right across the street from a bar. I was like, he's not from LaSalle, Peru. He doesn't know that Docs is infamous in our circles, right? And I was like, what? Over and over and over again. He had the idea already that we literally got to go and we got to take $150,000 of building materials out of a school before it was demolished last year. The property next to our building that was not for sale sold to us so that we could renegotiate how we do our kids' programs out of this building. One after another, Jesus has made clear this is where he's working. So this is why I want to invite you, because we sit at a really exciting time where I know Jesus is building his church here. And if you want to be part of something that has eternal value, I would tell you, this is the spot where you can say, how can I invest my time, my finances, my attention into this so that I can have an eternal reward? My invitation to you in this year, would you think about how you can build his church with your year? Instead of just building your year, What if you thought of your year as a way to build his church so that you might have those eternal rewards? Listen, we've gone on a journey into the unseen. We've heard God's call that this blessing is not just for us, it's for legacy, and now is the time to build. In fact, Genesis 12:7 is the moment where God appears, where finally God says, here is the thing, the blessing I had for you, and listen to it and see if it doesn't ring a little different as I'm talking about building. It says this, then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I will give this land to your descendants, and Abram built. I love this. He built an altar there and dedicated it to the Lord who had appeared to him there. I need you to see this. The moment that God gave Abram a blessing, the first thing he did was he built. He said, it's time that I use my energy to build something in this blessing so that people's eyes will be pointed to Jesus. An altar would be a place of worship to God and a place where their children and their children's children could come back to celebrate the goodness of God. I want to invite each of you to build his church with your year. Now, this is the part of the message. This is supposed to be at the beginning of this year after we kind of pitch this and then we come back to it. This is the part of the message where I'm going to go and be like, tell you about how we're going to do all this different multitude of things and how you can connect your time and your energy to it and your finance to it and all these different pieces. And it was going to be really, really arrayed in multiple different things. But this is where the story turns, okay? So if you've already checked out, lean back in for one more second, okay? We were working on our timeline for this building because we bought it at the end of 2021. Last year was all big changes, redesigning the building multiple times, figuring out how we were going to take and buy this property next door and then renegotiating how stuff would come out of that. All these big plans we had to, literally removing the entire floor and all these different pieces of getting down below, even what we thought, kind of really, really foundational things. And as we've been working on this and figuring where we're going in this next year, the conversation came up of like what our timeline really looks like. And we realized that kind of at the beginning of this year, we have over another year of work to be able to accomplish, to be honest with you. So we went back to our landlord, started talking about just negotiations with our contract. And our contract cannot be renegotiated. I need you to get this. We said we're going to need to extend our contract into the beginning of 2024. And our landlord said, no. Our church does not have a home on October 1st, 2023. 6 months from now, this is not ours anymore. 6 months from now, we do not have a location as a church. So we got together as a team and we said, what do we do? What do we do? How do we make this jump? Because literally, I need you to get this, okay? Like last weekend, probably this weekend as well, we have 400 people show up here on a weekend. Do you understand how hard it is to find a place for 400 people, right? Like this isn't like, oh, there's plenty of spots you could meet. It's very, very difficult. We got together with our team and we prayed and we said, what do we do in this moment? As we look forward to this journey we were going into, and as we tried to figure out what this is, and as we prayed, the answer became very clear. Build his church. There's a reason why God said from moment one of this year, the goal this year is build. It's a verb. I need you to work hard. The vision is build because I'm moving and the church is growing and this building is not going to be sufficient anymore. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to shift our focus to be laser focused on building and developing this location. We are going to pull together every drop of goodwill, generosity, and favor that we have earned and accrued. We are going to call people to radical generosity and service over these next 6 months. And listen to me, what was meant to be planned for 12 months of leisurely building, we're just going to do in 6 months' time. And before the end of this year, before the end of 2023, we're going to launch our services on our weekends in our new building before the end of this year. Now, let me be real with you. That's impossible. That's impossible. But we've seen God do the impossible already multiple times on this journey. It's impossible. There's no way you can do that. And I'm like, I agree. That's impossible. But the building wasn't even possible. And we got the building. The generosity was not possible. And the generosity came. God has already done the impossible so many times that even though we say, like, listen, this seems impossible, what I'm saying is our God specializes in the impossible. Now, how can we do this? How can we make this a reality, okay? I'm going to get to the practicals in just a minute. But if you don't mind, let me just do this. Let me set a foundation for you to understand why I really do believe this is possible. There's this amazing story in the Old Testament of a guy named Nehemiah. Nehemiah was a cupbearer for a foreign king, but he was a Jew. And the Jewish people had been exiled from their land. They literally didn't have a house. They didn't have a place. They were scattered and they were left out, and this broke the heart of Nehemiah. In fact, he asked his friend, he said, is there any rebuilding going on kind of in our area, the walls that make our community actually like a community? And he says, there's no walls. People are just left out, right, defenseless. And Nehemiah, when he hears this, man, it strikes him. It's kind of like hearing there's no home for your church, right? It says this in Nehemiah 2:2-5. He goes to serve the king, and the king asks, why do you look so sad? You don't look sick to me. You must be deeply troubled. And then I was terrified, but I replied, long live the king. How can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. The king asked, well, then how can I help you? And with a prayer to the God of heaven, I replied, if it pleases the king, and if you're pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. I need you to get this. Nehemiah hears the plight of his community, and he takes it personally. Instead of just going, well, I hope somebody fixes it, Nehemiah says, I want to fix it. The king says, what can I do? And he doesn't say, well, here's what I would love for you to do. He says, what I need you to do is would you send me because I want to go fix this. I take this situation personally. And listen, I believe the exact same can happen for us. If we as a community don't just think, well, yeah, I hope somebody figures this out. And instead you go, if our church doesn't have a home, I take that personally. I'm going to help be a solution to this. What can I do to make this a reality? Not hoping someone fixes it. No, I think I need to help fix this. The story of Nehemiah continues because the king actually lets him go. Says, yes, go ahead. He gives him blessings, sends him on his way. And it says that Nehemiah goes and he meets with his people and he invites them in and says, basically, it's time. Just like I said, like literally like, it's time, friends. It's time for us to build. And as the people begin to build, this is what it says in Nehemiah 4:21-23. We worked early and late from sunrise to sunset. Half of the men were always on guard. I also told everyone living outside the walls to stay in Jerusalem. That way that they and their servants could help with guard duty at night and work during the day. During this time, none of us, not I, nor my relatives, nor my servants, nor the guards who were with me ever took off our clothes. We carried our weapons with us at all times, and even when we went for water. He says this, he calls people together to build, but he says, I need you to get this. We're not just going to leisurely pace through this. He says, we're going to start early and we're going to stay late. We're going to see sunrises and sunsets as we work. He literally asked them to change their plans for their year. Did you get that? He's like, instead of traveling back and forth, I need you to cancel some of your travel plans and I need you to stay here to help get this work done. They kept laser focused. I need you to get this as the leaders. He goes, we didn't take off our work clothes, right? We didn't change into the swimsuits and chill and relax. We left our work boots on. Listen, the same can happen for us in this next 6 months. If we have people who are willing to push because they know they see God moving. People who are willing to change some of their plans for this year. change some of what they're going to put their energy to say, I need to shift my attention and shift some of my energy to building his church. If we have people who will focus and say that my first priority for the rest of this year, I'm going to see how I can build his church, how I could have kingdom impact instead. And listen, this is what's so awesome about the story of Nehemiah, because he comes and he calls people and he says, let's build, and they rally around it. Nehemiah 6:15 through 16 says this, to close that part of the story. On October 2nd, the wall was finished, just 52 days after we had begun. When our enemies in the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. They realized this work had been done with the help of our God. It's amazing because he says we finished these walls, depending on what translation you read it in. It says that those who were an enemy of the people of God, the way they translate it is they lost their confidence. They had confidence that the people of God, that these Jews weren't going to have a home anymore, and all of a sudden their confidence was just shredded. And I think it's so amazing because he says the people, not the people who are the God people, the people who don't like God, he says that they realized and recognized that must have been God. There's no way that those people built that wall in that short amount of time. And listen to me, I believe the same can be true for us in this year. I wonder if part of the reason why the story is going this way, part of the reason why Jesus is allowing this to be part of our story is because we are meant to step out by faith and to build his church, just like Nehemiah called them to build sacrificially. And that opportunity destroys the confidence of our enemy. That opportunity destroys the confidence of Satan. That opportunity destroys the spirit of our area when they see the church move forward that forcefully. What if the reason why God is leading us to do this way instead, if because the reality, when we finish this and when we have a weekend service there before the end of the year, what if our community that doesn't even say they believe in God yet would look at our church and say, that has to be God. Those people couldn't have done that. That's impossible. They don't have that amount of skill. They don't have that amount of money or time. How could that possibly be the reality that they already are meeting there and have that space ready and done? That must be God. Also, friends, what if it's the reality that God knows something that we don't? I told you, listen, last weekend, 400 people in our service. 400 people in a weekend. That's amazing, but what I think about with that is that means we are so much more strong to continue to spread the good news in this community. Friends, the reason why we want to continue to grow as a church isn't so we can grow crowds, it's so we can grow impact. Do you have any idea how amazing it is to think about our church getting to this space where now as we spread out around the Illinois Valley, hundreds of us are these agents of light and faith in our community? That people go from place to place to place and keep bumping into these irreligious, kind of down-to-earth Jesus people. You're one of those? You're one of those too? You're one of those too? You're one of those too? And people just keep getting shocked. Wait a second, the guy I work with, he's part of that Acts church. He just seems like a normal guy, but he says he loves Jesus. And the other person in my neighborhood, Friends, the reason why we want to grow our church isn't so we can grow our church like a big numbers. The reason why we want to build that building isn't so we can have some bigger building. Friends, it's because we want to continue to increase in impact so that we flood the Illinois Valley with the presence of Jesus. I wonder if the reason why this 6-month deadline is happening is because Jesus is up in heaven going, let's go. Let's go. Like, let's do it. I already have brought people. I wonder if Jesus is like, I already have more people waiting. I can't send them all. I would love to send them. You can't house them. You don't have enough chairs. You don't have enough space. What are you going to do if I send them all? I wonder if Jesus is just like, let's go. Let's get this ready so that we can move. Listen, What are you going to do with your 2023? Because I'll tell you what Jesus is doing with his. Jesus is going to build his church this year. We have seen him move over and over and over again in this journey. And I'm telling you, I believe we're at the beginning of a season, literally just a 6-month season, where we are going to see Jesus move miraculously to build his church. I'm telling you, if you want to build something that lasts, there's the secret. Find where Jesus is working. Find what God is doing and say, I'll be a part of it. I'll be part of what he is doing, and you will actually build something that lasts. And here's why I say this, okay? And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Please, you guys who know me, you can, if somebody else is like, you can nudge them and be like, nah, for real, okay? The reason why I want to encourage you, to challenge you to do this, okay, is not because I'm here like as the leader being like, I need your time, I need your money to accomplish this. All true, okay? Let's not be unreal. It's because I don't want you to miss out on an opportunity to be part of something that God is doing. I wholeheartedly believe this, okay? I wholeheartedly believe this. We're getting ready to walk into a season that some of us, this is going to be the story we tell our kids and our grandkids about. All of us hope that in our faith, we have these moments where we have like these stories. That we have these moments that when our kids start to grow up and they start talking about who God is and his faithfulness, and when our grandkids come around and we get to share those words with them, we hope that we actually have a story to tell, don't we? And I wholeheartedly believe, friends, listen, we are sitting right before one of those moments where this is the story you're going to tell your kids. This is a story you're going to tell your grandkids when they say, is the church important? Is Jesus real? Is God powerful? Is he faithful? And you're going to say, let me tell you a story. You're going to harken back. The year was 2023. And we saw Jesus do a miracle, and we saw Jesus do something that was impossible to build his church in our community. I can drive you there and I can show it to you. I can show you the anchor that's still in the community where God's light is moving into the Illinois Valley. Friends, I don't want you to miss your opportunity to be part of God's story. Would you build his church in 2023? Would you change the focus of your year? Would you just decide, this is the year. I have plenty of things I'm going to do with my life, but for this year, for this next season, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, what my purpose is. I'm going to build his church. Now, here's how you can get really, really practical, okay? If you're wondering, what does this look like? Where do we go from here? You got to have practicality, okay? The next step for all of you is simple. I need you, over this next week, over these coming weeks, to go to a website, buildhischurch.org, okay? Buildhischurch.org. Shouldn't be hard for you to remember, okay? Pretty simple. And here's what I want you to do is I want you to pray and I want you to see what is it that God would call you to do, because this is really simple. It's just an awesome, clean web page. You go on to it, and there's 3 things that I need to ask you to consider doing when you go on there. 3 links that you can follow, 3 things that you can click and you can be a part of. The first is on that page you can find where it says serve, and you can click on there and you can give your information. You can give your contact info. You can give a list of what your special skills are, what you have talents in as well. And when you do, it'll come to us, and then we can contact you and we can tell you about where we're going this year. Because if I may, listen, the first thing we literally need is we need hands and feet and we need talent. We are going to work on this building literally every week for the rest of the year. Like every single Saturday, people are going to be there working. Multiple nights during the week, people are going to be working. Maybe some people during the days, people are going to be working. And if you sign up to serve, we're going to tell you about each one of the projects that are coming up, each one of the things we're in. Now we're framing, now we're insulating, now we're doing electrical, now we're doing drywall, now we're doing lighting, now we're doing painting. And we're going to let you know every one of those steps where you can be a part and you can take and build into this what you can when you have the skills to be able to match that. You can sign up and you can serve. The second thing you can do, which is really cool, is you can give. On this page, when you go on there, when you scroll down past serve, there's this button that says give. And this is really cool because I wanted to make sure that this wasn't just the idea of like, yeah, I'll give to it. I literally want to invite you to purchase what we need for this church. And here's what I mean is on this page, when you click on give, it actually takes you to an online store of all of the materials we have to build or buy for this church. It's literally $150,000 of different products that we are going to buy over these next 6 months. And my prayer is this: would you literally go shopping and would you buy what it is that you want to purchase for this building? That I don't just want you to give $20. I want you to scroll down and I want you to say, I'm buying 2x4s for the walls. You scroll down and you say, I'm going to buy the new TV for the kids' room. I'm going to buy that. I can do that. You scroll down and you say, I'm going to buy carpet for this area here. And that you will literally drop those in your basket. And when you click buy, it's going to take you through. And that finance is going to come in so we can go out and we can purchase. Don't worry, nothing's getting shipped to your door, okay? When you buy a pallet of carpet, don't worry, it's not showing up at your house. It's going into the fund so then we can buy and bring it to our house. But I literally want to invite you to say, I want to build His church. Literally, like, you can literally go and buy the 2x4s we're going to use to build His church. You can literally go and buy the paint that's going to go on the outside of our building when we finish painting it. Like, I would just invite you, would you just look and say, what is it that God would have me do in this? And last, we need people to pray. The third option, I'm going to pray. And this one seems like it's less. It's not. It's not. If you sign and you click that and say, I will pray, we're going to send you all of the things that we are going through so that you can bring them to the Lord. Let me be real with you. When I said this is impossible, I mean just that. This situation of what we have to get done, of contractors laying on top of each other, of volunteers doing this, of what we have to do, it is basically impossible. We need God's favor like crazy. We need people to pray that God would move in mighty ways. He already has. That God would do the miraculous to connect generosity to our church, to connect contractors to be kind and move stuff and serve us first before they serve somebody else because they believe in who we are in this community. And I would ask you, would you just take these things before the Lord, and we are going to constantly keep sending you, here, would you pray about this? Would you ask God's favor over this? Would you believe that God could do this so that you can know where we're going? Listen, I want to invite you this year to take your faith from a noun and turn it into a verb. To let this be the year that you build, that you activate your faith and you say, I'm part of something where I'm laying foundations. I'm building something that's actually going to last. When I get to heaven and my life is run through that fire, that there will at least be one thing I know that I contributed to, that I gave to, that actually was for an eternal impact. Friends, we're going to build His church this year. And I want you to be a part of it. I don't want you to watch it. I want you to be a part of it. I want this to be the year that you point back at and you're like, that was the year, 2023, I built His church. Would you pray with me? Jesus, thank you so much. God, thank you for a challenge. Man, a challenge. But God, I am up for a challenge if I know you're on my side. We're up for a challenge as a church when we know that you're on our side. Jesus, I pray that you would ignite in us just a hunger to be part of what you're doing. A hunger to say, I want to serve where Jesus is serving. I want to give to what Jesus is doing. I want to pray and have attention and concern for what the church is doing as Jesus is moving. I pray that you would activate each of us. I pray, Jesus, that when we get through this 6-month journey, I pray the same thing that happened in the story of Nehemiah would happen for us. I pray that we would stand back and marvel at your faithfulness. And I pray that the world around us, who would call us enemy, would say, wow, apparently God is real, because that's impossible. That's impossible. Jesus, I invite you to stir our hearts deeply and to inspire on us the courage and the faith necessary to make this a reality. We're going to build your church this year. and I believe we're going to see you move. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.